So today, folks, we're going to be sitting down and ranking Season 2 of Classic Doctor Who. And before we get started, I just want to say this video is entirely my opinion. Your ranking almost certainly will not line up with mine, and that is totally okay as long as we're both having fun. Secondly, I just want to warn you that there's going to be a couple of spoilers in this ranking, so if you don't want any of those, feel free to leave now. With that said, let's get started by ranking all 9 episodes from Classic Doctor Who Season 2. The Web Planet comes in so low because it's so uninteresting. I remember it being ridiculous and unentertaining and just not capturing my attention for very much at all. This goes on for about 2.5 hours, and it's 2.5 hours too long because I don't remember being interested at all. It's just so little happens in so much time, and by the time this episode was over, I just felt drained after having sat down for that long and watched that much nothing happen. And while it wasn't an awful episode, it was far from a good one. The chase is the exit for Barbara and Ian, and is also not a particularly good episode. I mean, most of the episode, the Doctor and the companions are just going around doing nothing. They're just like, oh, we're gonna go here, the dog's gonna chase us, then we're gonna go here, the dog's gonna chase us, and that goes on for 6 parts. And while it is a little bit more interesting than the previous episode, there's just so little going on here, and there's some really, really bad American accents, and ultimately this is just not a very interesting episode, although I do like the final part with the exit of Barbara and Ian. The Rescue is a really short story, and it's pretty enjoyable as a story. I mean, it's short, it's concise, it's entertaining. There's a nice little moment where the Doctor calls Susan, and it's just, overall, it's just a solid episode. Very little happens in this one, but it did manage to keep my interest pretty well, and it just ended up being what I thought was a pretty solid story, and one that I was just happy to visit for just 2 short episodes. And I liked the way it concluded and just the way everything worked out. It just was handled pretty well, and I found myself enjoying it. The romance is pretty enjoyable. Actually, the first part is not great. It's actually the weakest part, but then it goes on and it becomes more interesting as they get more involved in this Roman culture and everyone gets more mixed up and stuff. And then it has elements that feel a bit, I don't know, sitcom-y, that don't totally work, but some of them kind of work. So I just kind of like the stuff that goes on with Barbara and Ian, and the stuff that the Doctor has to do, and there's just elements that I just found myself liking, and ultimately results in a pretty good episode, although not a perfectly consistent one. This was, on the whole, just rather enjoyable. The Crusade ranks at this point because it's relatively consistent. Episode 3 does stand out above the rest, and there's a really great scene with Barbara that I just really liked. That's just a really good scene, and that actually elevates this whole episode a little bit. But the rest of it is just relatively enjoyable. It's just got some fun stuff, and there's nothing particularly great. The most noteworthy thing is that Julian Glover does play the king in this one, which is, it's nice. He does a pretty good job at that, and you know, everyone's fine in this, and I do really like that scene with Barbara, which is what elevates this whole episode. But other than that, there's not a lot to write home about this one. It's just pretty solid. Planet of Giants I just found to be an enjoyable episode. I mean, there's a couple of little complaints that I have with how these elements all mesh together well, but ultimately what is resulted from what they've done here is just a fun episode. I just really have fun watching this, and I really enjoy it. And it's not great, there's nothing really meaty here, there's nothing to really dig your teeth into, but I just have so much fun watching this episode that I can't help but like it above similar episodes of similar quality, just because I have so much fun enjoying this one, and it's just enjoyable. The Time Meddler, it's quite solid. Basically, this episode has the meddling monk in it, which is pretty cool. We see a new TARDIS, and that's the first time that we see that, and we see him messing around with time, and that's fun, and the Doctor deals with that. But this one also has Steven and the companion of the time, I think, was Vicky, and you know, they work pretty well. But really, this one stands out because of the meddling monk, and that's enjoyable to watch. That's fun to have on screen. I like how that whole situation gets resolved. So that results in some pretty fun stuff, although there's not much more to say about that. The Space Museum is a 4-part story, and the first episode is just really solid. I found myself really engaged. I thought it had this really great atmosphere. It was very mysterious, and you could never quite tell what was going on. And then the further stuff went, the more predictable it became, and the less interesting, although it was still good. And those Parts 2 through 4 were solid and engaging, and didn't really let down after that first part too much, because it was still a very solid episode from that point on. So that first episode is just a bonus because it's really good, and all this comes together to result in what I thought was a really standout episode, and one of the better ones that I've seen in classic Doctor Who so far. And that first episode is one of the best, and ultimately it results in this, which the Space Museum I thought was quite solid. The Dalek invasion of Earth. It had to be this one. This was the most interesting episode, the most engaging episode, the most thrilling episode, the most emotional episode, the most consistent episode. This was the only episode that could be at number 1 on this list. This episode thoroughly made use of the Daleks, made them intimidating, made them really work 150 years in the future from then, 100 years from when I'm recording this, and they just really were sold in this episode, and I thought they did a great job of handling that, and I was just thoroughly wrapped up in this whole episode. And the exit of Susan and the speech that the Doctor has is beautiful, and so far that final part of the Dalek invasion of Earth is my favorite single episode in classic Who. That's just a fantastic episode. The way everything's wrapped up is handled well, and that whole speech is great, and I just really am going to remember this one because it's a great one. This is a classic Doctor Who episode. So folks, that's going to do it for my ranking of Doctor Who Season 2. If you would like to share your ranking in the comments below, feel free to do that, or just tell me some of your least favorite episodes of this season. I will be happy to listen. And that's all I really have to say. I've got a ranking for Season 1. I have got classic reviews out. I have got some reviews for Series 11, a bunch of stuff on the channel if you're interested in checking that out. And if not, then that's totally fine. I appreciate you checking out this one video today. But anyway, folks, that's going to do it for now. So, thank you for watching. Take care, and have a lovely week.